there's just more money to be made chasing silver and gold right now than trying to play anything ag related. Tech is all around AI. AI is now overbuilt. You're starting to see some fraying there on the sides. Oracle losing an investment partner. Costs are rising. The customers buying into this not as fast as. Does that mean AI is a hype? No, AI is for real. The problem is that just like everything else, you build too many Home Depots and you're just going to have too many of them, like too many coffee shops. You're going to have too many AI data centers.
Good afternoon, everyone. Bob Kudla joining me today. Trade Genius, TradeWith2030.com. Wanted to talk about some silver, maybe some cryptocurrency. What are these data centers doing? I mean, how is the weather affecting some of our crops? Is that even a good thing to be looking at or trying to make money with this year? All eyes seem to be upon the metals. And again, your risk assessment is going to be one of two things. Either you want to hold it physically or you want to, trade it on the markets paper. But at some point, the rubber is going to meet the road and this paper market will not exist any longer. And you can see Samsung, the company themselves, they're down buying direct from the mines now in Canada and Mexico, both. So when you see something like this, they're going outside the traditional markets to secure supply, knowing that in the future, there might not be that stable paper market for physical delivery. I think that's broken. JP Morgan moved their offices, if I may read, to Singapore. They took 10% of the world's available silver supply with them, 150 million ounces, and that's 10% of a year's supply, into Singapore, and their entire metals trading desk is now in Singapore. It was rumor in Thanksgiving that this occurred. Now it's actually validated that their entire metals trading desk, everybody involved in that had moved over and is now currently living and operating in Singapore. So U.S. jurisdiction is gone. Are they worried about confiscation of metals? I don't know. But we're just going to gradually move through the conversation. So thank you, everybody, for joining.
Well, I think right now, we're talking Friday before Christmas. I think we may get a bit of a rally here in Bitcoin with the Santa rally. Then we just have to see what happens in January. But all the crazy talk on Bitcoin has been mooted. So, you have people are back on the gold silver trade and they're off the Bitcoin train. And they do cycle back and forth from each other. So you're just going to have to take off your dogma and just trade with what's working. And, over time, both will do well. But it's just going to be like a sailboat beaten into the wind. There's going to be a lot of tacking.
So this flip-flop of liquidity going from silver or precious metals back into Bitcoin, I mean, it seems like everybody's going to be tremendously focused on silver and gold this next year. Quantitative easing, I think, started on the 12th of this month. They don't call it quantitative easing. That's $40 billion a month to buy back our own treasury bonds, $4 trillion, whatever it might be. But, you're talking about these flows, like the global money supply is going to have to increase if they're just printing. And Japan's doing the same. Like everybody's just buying their own debt back to prevent a collapse. Somewhere in the middle, this flip-flop of liquidity moving around. I mean, is it going to get stuck rock hard in the metals? Or, I mean, is it anything going to finally flow back to the BTC, do you think?
I don't know. I mean, but it will go back and forth. We've already seen that. So that money tends to stay in that realm. It doesn't go into the fiat realm at all. So it goes gold, silver, hard assets back to Bitcoin, and then back again. So we just have to kind of watch it, and hopefully they're just making higher highs all the time. Remember, Bitcoin could get down into the 70s, okay, and still all we'd be doing was touching former resistance, and then breaking back out again. And people, they tend to forget, especially new people watching Bitcoin, that, it has 80% drawdowns. So, 120 to 70,000 area is, you're talking that's a 40%, pullback. How many times have Bitcoin's done that? And
it's innumerable. That's like a normal number that would be something to sit in. That wouldn't even be spooky at all. That's just normal.
But now the difference is that there's so many leveraged products out there, and that are mirror and matching, and tracking Bitcoin. it tends to make the moves a little bit more aggressive. We'll see bigger swings again because people will be dumping, Bitcoin lookalikes, right? If Bitcoin starts collapsing, or people will be scrambling for Bitcoin lookalikes like IBIT, for example, or Bido, when Bitcoin is going to start ripping again. MicroStrategy. I mean, look at MicroStrategy. It's down. Its market cap is below the price of Bitcoin. I mean, just a year ago, it was at $500 and some dollars, and it was unassailable. They're talking about Michael Saylor hitting $1,000 for MicroStrategy, right? Now this thing's scraping. That's how these moves manifest themselves. When you start getting all this leverage in the system, whenever the bankers get involved and add leverage to a product, start getting this kind of stuff. Just like they did when gold came out and started putting leverage and fake gold out there for people to trade. You start getting wide swings, and it's easy to suppress it.
Well, the suppression of metals too, like you mentioned that you think that caps off that somewhere in this next year or so that the paper market's going to break, and that's going to be it's going to find its own real pricing. So where will that occur then? If it's not going to occur on the, let's say the COMEX or something, where is the price going to be established? Out of Shanghai or Singapore? I mean, is this where the new places on the planet are going to be for metals trading? Because if JP Morgan has bailed out and moved to Singapore with 10% of the world's silver supply, and like you say, China said they're not going to export any longer silver. So right there, that's a huge amount off the market right there.
I think the problem is going to be in China, not the United States. Everybody's looking at the wrong target. I mean, China's debt to GDP is scary, and its GDP is suspect. Its GDP is probably 30% overstated. And so I think you're going to see an event in Asia before you'll see anything happening in the United States. In fact, Asia's going to go and Europe's going to go before the United States has any kind of problem whatsoever. In fact, the U.S. will be a beneficiary of the problems those guys are having. So stay bullish on the U.S. and stay bearish on China, stay bearish on Europe, because those guys are already down the river and they have no hope of catching the life ring at this point. And no ability to. China's a closed system. EU requires unanimous consent. Those guys are in big trouble.
So let's say MicroStrategy gets into a pinch, and they were talking about if their MNAV dropped below 1, they were going to have to sell some Bitcoin out. And MicroStrategy being the bastion, the leader, and then Misty, which was one of the products related to MicroStrategy's share price, had to do a reverse split itself and go for a 5-to-1 reverse, meaning price got so low, around $7. Now there was 36, that they coupled those 5 of those $7 together to give it a $35 share price to make it look like, wow, it's still at 35. The losses in some of these products related to cryptocurrency is also stark. If they do start to exit some of their Bitcoin positions, some of these ETFs, and if Saylor himself and MicroStrategy starts to sell, I mean, what kind of negative confidence is that going to sweep out into the market?
MicroStrategy doesn't have to sell any Bitcoin to survive. Okay, they can cover their interest expense on the preferred. So I think people are looking at the wrong target. They're trading at a discount to Bitcoin right now too. So I think we're going to see a bit of a push higher in MicroStrategy. And they're in a position now where they probably can start monetizing about 25% of their holdings in the form of leverage for people to speculate on. So I don't see MicroStrategy falling too much more unless Bitcoin utterly collapses. So 30 to 40,000, is it possible? Sure. Is it probable? I don't think so. Unless we go into a really deep recession, which I think they're going to throw so much money at the problem next year. It's a midterm that anything that hits could be short-lived. Even if I'm wrong and it does hit 34,000, it's going to be a V bottom. Yeah, and you guys know me. I've been talking about this stuff for years. I'm not a Bitcoin maniac. So I trade it. I own IBIT right now. I've been trading in and out of it. I think we're in consolidation. I'll get mucho bullish At 70,000, I'll get mucho bullets at a new high. In the meantime, I'm just trading in and out of it. So, but look, tech is all around AI. AI is now overbuilt. You're starting to see some fraying there on the sides. Oracle losing an investment partner. Costs are rising. The customers buying into this not as fast as people anticipated. Does that mean AI is a hype? No, AI is for real. The problem is that just like everything else, you build too many Home Depots and Lowe's and Tractor Supply and think you're just gonna have too many of them, like too many coffee shops. You're gonna have too many AI data centers. And look, you can't get the load. The electrical load is not coming. You know, Trump talked the other day about how much new power generation is coming online, and it's still not enough. You know, so you're talking probably the low to mid 30s before there'll be enough production capacity to handle the dream of AI that's coming out of people's mouths right now. So,
But can you clarify that for me? When you said low to mid 30s, are you talking about like 2030s and 2032 and 2035,
yeah,
this sort of time frame?
yeah, that's what I mean. We're talking 10 years before all that stuff gets built out.
But everybody's electrical prices are going to rise to infinitum over the next 10 years.
I think that'll end too. Look, these guys are all public utility commissions. Those people get voted in and out, and you're already starting to see pushback now on different locations. They canceled the data center. I forget exactly where, because the projected cost increase of electricity was unacceptable, and the city council after they approved the plans, they didn't approve the building because of that. It's starting to get real now, and it's a hard thing to defend, saying I want to raise your cost of living so I can put in a data center that's going to lower your quality of life because it's likely to be taking your job from you. So the AI people haven't done a really good job of explaining why we should be excited about AI. I know certain people should be excited because the people that are going to own these things, are going to make a lot of money. But the people that are just living in the country are going to see their wages continually to fall, and the jobs available to them are going to become more and more meaningless. So it's going to be interesting to see. For me, from a trading standpoint, I think Nvidia and Palantir are bouncing their highs right now, and next year will be a great time to short them again.
And if you're interested in more information, head over to tradewith2030.com. You can jump in the rooms and see what Bob is also talking about, future forecasts. And Bob, the thing you mentioned about data centers, they are very much into the spear front of this whole surveillance society. Now, the two things that go with that hand in hand are tremendous amounts of silver. You're paying for the build out of these by raising everybody's residential rates to allow the build out and then a continuation of discount power for these giant centers. And that's a hard sell. But at the same time, we're looking at struggling volumes of supply for silver specifically. And it just doesn't make sense how they're going to be able to accomplish this unless they have something else they've already jumped to in terms of technology, but they're not telling us and they're stringing along. And then the next chapter of technology is already out there ready to unveil. Or they wouldn't keep building out these centers indefinitely when there's not enough power right now to power all of them. You were talking Tesla with sodium batteries versus the silver solid states that some other companies are going to be rolling out. Like it's about 3 kilograms per battery or about 100 ounces. I looked that up while you were talking. And this is for some selected manufacturers. Now think about that. 100 ounces per battery per car. And if they manufacture 1,000 cars, that's 100,000 ounces. Now, many companies do 1 million cars a year. Where's all that silver going to come from? And this build out of what we're seeing with data centers for the track and trace and know where everything is in real time and the Internet of Things and instant monitoring of your license plates and your facial recognition. This all depends on having an enormous amount of metals, which currently there's a bottleneck of.
Yeah, the thing I'm more excited about is SpaceX probably going to go public next year. So talking to you on my new Starlink, that thing is plug and play. Literally, you plug 2 cords in, It finds the satellite while you're paying for your service. It's amazing. So SpaceX is going to, once that goes public, I'll definitely get a piece of that. They're going to own the digital information landscape. So pretty incredible what they're going to be doing. Between their data centers and their ability to communicate and robustness and the redundancy, it's going to be pretty incredible. Also, another thing too, on the plus side, pretty interesting, is that the AI data centers are going to focus first on basically healthcare. So you're gonna see that. In fact, they're already at a point now where the AI data set has more functional knowledge in it than all the doctors and specialists in the world. And that's a good thing. I don't always want to dwell on the bad thing. They're going to be able to quickly correlate different maladies and causes and effects, that our heads are going to spin. But I think what we're going to find in the next 10 years, when you go to your doctor, you're going to actually talk to a robot doc before you talk to a real doc. In some ways, that's pretty good because the bedside manner will be consistent, and people will tend to share. Look what they do now. They share things with Grok, right? They're recording things for in posterity, right? But people will start talking to these doctors. They'll tell them things that they wouldn't tell a doctor because they're just talking to a machine. The machine's not going to judge them, and I mean that in a good way, not necessarily a bad way. And so they're going to get a lot more information. And I have a client who's a robot surgeon right now, and he basically said in 10 years they're not going to need me at all. Okay, and he's top of the line internal medicine doc. And he just said, yeah, in 10 years, the technology is so incredible. He said, I could be doing a surgery and shaking my hand, and the robot's just taking into account and just continuing on its thing. It's going to get even better and better and better, especially the intricacies. In the body, they'll be working on nerves and blood vessels, and brain surgery will probably be all robotic surgery at some point where they'll literally be able to go in there and carve out a tumor where it's almost impossible to do right now. And some of those tumors that spread in the brain, that kind of spider web out, they're going to be able to get all of it. So there's going to be some really, really wild stuff happening here in the next 10 years. And I think it's really going to help. We don't have to watch Japan. Japan and Korea have a worsening demographics than we do, and they're addicted to tech. So we're gonna see some of the stuff getting released there before they release the United States. But we're gonna be leading the way because us and Israel probably lead in medicine anyway. So it's gonna be fun to watch.
Well, hopefully the robots won't go, wow, frontal lobotomy for everybody. Oh, one flew over the cuckoo's nest.
Well, there's always bad with the good, so I can't control that. I can only control, how I feel about it. So I'm gonna root for the good stuff first.
Now, speaking of that, we are coming off of solar maximum into solar minimum on the regular 11.8 year cycle. And we've already had an enormous amount of, coronal mass ejections, CMEs hitting the planet, especially over this last year or year and a half. But with that said, this new tech that we're going to is smaller, it's disposable. If the entire satellite network is wiped out from a CME, it can just be relaunched and fully replaced in under a year. Like what you see with Starlink right now and the launches they're doing, and they're just dominating the information space. Those things are disposable. They're meant to be disposable. That they know in the future we're going to have losses of them. They're so tiny and so compact and so easy to replace in mass. But again, it comes back. How much silver is used in each one of those satellites? They're planning for some losses of our traditional infrastructure, so they've already planned it that it can be that boxed up replaceable infrastructure.
We're getting an ARC event next week too here in California. We're getting two of them. One's hitting the California Oregon coast, and the second one is heading straight into like the Placerville dead center central Sierra Nevadas. I guess 7,000 feet and above is going to be snow. If it performs as advertised, you're looking at 15 to 20 feet of new snow on the higher peaks, and then rain event could be anywhere between 10 and 20 inches in the valleys below. And where I live in Southern California, it's going to be a rain event from top to bottom. We're scheduled for 2 to 4 inches. So all the reservoirs in California in the next 2 weeks will register full going into 2026, because there's no place in the state that's not going to be hit with record amounts of rain for December. I mean, we've been getting early rains this year, and it's from the global solar minimum. I always told people that when we get to the solar minimum, you're going to look at Southwest United States is going to get more and more rain. You see the monsoon flows strong in Arizona, and now we're getting rain, and it's still green out here. We were just in Santa Barbara, spending a couple of days up in wine country, and all the pastures for the cattle are green. Okay, this time of year, normally those pastures are browned out before the rainy season starts in earnest, but it's lush because we just had, big storms just a couple of weeks ago, and now we're going to get another round of big storms. It's going to be raining in California for a week straight in some places. So, and then the snowpack's going to be amazing, and we're going to go into the teeth of winter with full reservoir. So they're going to be having the dump. We're going to get Tulare Lake back again. That was the biggest, one of the biggest inland lakes in the country, and it's seasonal. I don't know if you knew that. It's like 50 miles by 50-mile lake, because some of the rivers in California don't flow straight to the ocean. They get caught up in this depression called Tulare. And 2 years ago, farmers couldn't farm because they had to dump the water onto that lake. That's by design, and that brought back millions of waterfowl that they haven't seen in years, because that lake. And I think we're going to have it again in 2026. Pretty wild. We're in a La Nina event, which usually means no rain, but this La Nina event's going to be pretty wet. Everything that people knew about the weather, as you and I talked about for over a decade, is they know nothing, and they're going to be relearning things that is the first time they're seeing in their models, because their models couldn't go back far enough.
Yeah, Bob, I'm actually in the final edit of my new book, The Grand Solar Minimum, preparing for the climate shift. It's more of a practical guide to understanding Earth's natural cycle, the climate cycles, and what these cycles have done through history, the civilizations that have come and go, and it's all related to the cornerstone of having reliable food production, because that is the only thing that matters. Is there enough food for your population to continue to have enough energy, calories, to move forward, solve problems, and continue with what we consider daily life? And if the answer is no, and that's disrupted somehow, this is the catalyst for all collapses through the last 10,000 years of every civilization that's come and gone. They lost their reliable food production. It's really that simple.
You want to talk about a calamity in the making, and other parts of the world are seeing these arc events too. So I think it's going to be really interesting next 3 or 4 years. I look forward to the book.
So we were trying to get it up before Christmas as a last minute Christmas gift if y'all are looking for something. Now, Bob, the last time you and I talked, you said the fog was there, the Tool fog. They call it the radioactive fog because of the temperature differences. Is that fog still there? The reason I ask is because that fog filled in the exact same area you're talking about in that Central Valley there.
Yeah, it just lifted, I guess, there, and we had a lighter fog today. Just so people know what radioactive fog means, is that it's not radioactive in the nuclear
Fukushima
sense.
fog.
It's radioactive in the sense that the particulates hang in the air at breath level. So people are breathing in stuff that normally is either washed to the ground or pushed up into the higher atmosphere. And I think it was 20 days of no sunshine in that valley, which is absolutely amazing. And that two-leaf fog is like frozen fog too. So, in the mornings, you're driving through like an ice fog. It's kind of scary. I didn't go up that way, but I was just in Santa Barbara area and in San Ynez Valley, and they had a pretty thick fog. And where I live here, we had fog even this morning, and I think this is the last of the fog because the storm's pushing in. But we went sometimes almost a whole day where the fog didn't lift. Kind of interesting, and I'd never seen that in my life. So I've lived here 30 some years. So obviously it's happened before, but not in my recollection.
Yeah, and then we had severe thunderstorms last night and we lost power for about 3 hours. But this time of the year, that is absolutely unthinkable for most people. It is, near the end of December. And these thunderstorms were as powerful as anything that was in the spring. I saw the lightning, heard the thunder, and it rattled the windows. I mean, this type of thunderstorm really, and older people are saying how strange and unusual it was as well. So, I mean, it's just an inversion of the seasons. And, again, what time or type or length of cycle are we talking about going back to find the same exact circumstances? Wherever you're looking, there's something strange, but there's many opportunities in this danger or changeover as well. So, Bob, one last thing, if I could hold on to for a second. Tell me about agriculture. Are there any ag plays that you're looking at over there at Trade Genius? And please remember, tradewith2030.com. Check out what Bob's doing over there in the rooms.
The softs have been pushing down chocolate, cocoa and coffee, wheat and corn, soybeans. All those prices got pushed down pretty hard. I looked at, some of the mid-tier, the distributors, and nothing exciting at all. Nothing really popping out that, I want to chase. There's just more money to be made chasing silver and gold right now than trying to play anything ag related. The only thing I would say is that flour is cheaper than it has been in years. I know that pasta is back down to pre-COVID levels. So there is a bit of a glut on the market in terms of at least, wheat and corn and things of that nature. And the potato prices have come down and egg prices have come down. So maybe that COVID lift is abating a little bit, but we'll have to see if there's any kind of, impact from this winter on those grains. But right now those prices are rock bottom. And so nothing exciting to me in trading them. Going from tech to silver, we're getting the volatility that we love as traders. So I don't need to worry about that stuff at all. I'm just going to trade the things that are moving.
2026, the year of silver. Mark it on your calendar, but moving up through 2030, that's a whole different thing. No silver, no Agenda 2030. This is going to be an integral part of this entire rollout, is having a constant supply of metals and electricity both. So that's why I say from here to 2030, without both, the implementation is not going to happen. And also the semiconductor chips. A lot of people say China is going to invade Taiwan. But if they do, then the semiconductor industry would grind to a halt, as well as all the tech planned for these rollouts into the 2030 agendas. That would go back actually 5 years or more until we could find another place to manufacture at this constant rate that is needed. The semiconductor chips themselves, the mines that are pulling, and the recycling that's going on for silver, and those willing to sell it back into the market. Like, there's an enormous amount of things that have to continue forward if this entire global plan is to move forward. It all has to sync up. In addition, this entire plan is all revolving around a new monetary system, a central bank digital currency, or a stable coin, which also has its own power uses to run the nodes. Again, heavy on the tech, need the chips. It's so intertwined that, if somebody's threatening to turn off that supply, in this globalized world, I just think it's more of a coordinated play than it really is what we're seeing in front of us of hostilities from nation to nation. Maybe that's a little too woo-woo to take us out of the interview here, Bob. What do you think? TradeWith2030.com. That's my last thought.
Just remember, I don't get too happy. I don't get too sad. all you can do is control what you can. And for me, making money, as long as I'm doing it morally and legally, I don't worry about too much of the other things that I can't control. And I think that's good advice for your anxiety levels. It's nice to be aware, but don't let it control you. You're ultimately in control of your own emotions and your own abilities. So, with that, I bid you adieu and a happy new year, and I'll catch you on the other side, Dave.